Oh.
Hello and welcome back to the WTF Sunderland Podcast. As we seem to be popping out podcasts like pups, to be honest with you. I've done more podcasts since the season's ended than I have been doing during the season itself. But look, Sunderland have been promoted. We were still high on an awful lot of that, and now we're into that transfer business. It looks by all purposes that Jobe is going to Dortmund. I think we sort of expected it to happen. And look, we're not going to be doing a episode for every single player that we sign or every single player that does leave. So Leo Yelder, when he goes out on loan, will not be getting his own show, or will he? But look, Jobe Bellingham is going to be what looks like a record departure from Sunderland's perspective. And I think he's a player we've all really grown to love. We're all a bit sad, but we're all not as sad as we would have been if we didn't get promoted. So we're going to kind of like chat about it a little bit because it's something to talk about. But to join me is Peter. Peter, I feel like you actually haven't been on that much, but it's just because you're not Charlie Wyke.
No, I'm not Charlie Wyke.
You're not.
I have signed some checks that are gonna bounce, man. Oh, oh, he's a big lad as well. He's gonna hunt
Pays,
me down.
pays for Carlisle now, mate. So the checks probably bounce anyway.
He's now got a lease on a Mazda SUV in Brandenburg. No, I'm here. I'm back. I'm good. I'm still not really on whatever time zone Germany is, but anyway, shock news coming out of here. Job will be no longer working on a Sunday. He will be no longer making any noise after 5 p.m. on an evening. Das ist die Ruhezeit. He will have to learn how to sort all of his recyclables in a really quite fascistic way. Otherwise, his neighbors will come complaining. He's going to have to. I mean, I really hope that they have somebody that helps them with all of the stuff with like the Ausländerbehörde and all of that, because Germany's a mess, mate, when it comes to moving here. So I'm presuming there is somebody that just like helps them with all of that. But
I mean, metaphorically, he's dead, isn't he, in Sunderland terms? So, like,
uh yes and no, but I think he kind of falls into that Ahmad class almost,
yeah,
where
he does.
I kept looking out for him afterwards, and I still think of him as ours. A little piece of him as ours at some point. Um, but yeah, and I'll probably do the same thing with Job, and we'll yeah, keep an eye out for him in the Bundesliga. Look, there was always a plan, is the way I look at it. From
Yeah.
I think he was always going. He's gone after getting the job done that he came to do. We're getting some good money for him. Good luck to him.
Yeah, largely the same. Although, like, I'm at that point in the day. Bearing in mind, it's like just before 7:15 on the Sunday where Fabrizio Romano's gone, deal done, which basically means it's deal done. And I'm still not kind of I'm listening to like I'm an inch away from listening to Backstreet Boys Millennium album, just the love songs pretty much because I really miss them. But Sophie, look, you haven't had the heartache. You were too young of losing Kevin Phillips. We've all been in worse positions. How are you feeling about the current heartache of Joe Goon?
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of them, isn't it?
Mm.
It's almost it feels like someone's punched you in the stomach because how I view it is that during my time supporting Sunderland, like you said, I'm too young for remembering Kevin Phillips leaving and all that kind of stuff. We've had really unlikable squads and really unlikable players. This is sorry to any former players who make any further appearances on. We hate you. But no, but we have, and the idea of any person in the squad at the moment leaving pretty much the first 11 and probably the subs bench, maybe people who haven't played like, your pervaders and that and wouldn't really be as bothered about. But with Job, it feels like he's played such an integral part. And the fact that he's leaving, it is upsetting. But I suppose everyone moves on. And I think we were all prepared for this. But when it does happen, it's still such a shock.
I think for me, like, because I said it's been a while since I've been sad about a player leaving, and Ashley went Ross Stewart, and I was like, oh yeah, it's really sad about Ross Stewart going. But Ross was like, he had that injury, and they had the whole contract debacle and it kind of felt like for a while that something was going to have to happen with him, either a new contract on reduced terms or he was going to go if someone put a decent bid in. With Job, I think we'd all kind of bizarrely convinced ourselves, at least I had, that he definitely loved Sunderland and Dortmund wasn't that interesting and he didn't want to play in the Champions League anyway because Stadium Light's really good and look, he really fancied that relegation battle next year. But I think ultimately it is kind of a laugh in the face in a way to some people who said, "Oh, he's not as good as I don't know." Let's pick out players' name randomly. Jack Rodoni. That is, he's not as good as those players. When we quite clearly could see the boy had the talent to be now our record sale by the looks of it, and Dortmund's record signing. I think it proves just how good he's been at Sunderland, doesn't it? Really.
Yeah, absolutely. It's it just shows the levels, and I personally hope he goes right to the very top because you know I wish the boy nothing but the best, and I think that look, his parents are clever people,
Mm.
very clever people, and can you imagine the scrutiny and the kind of the spotlight on him in the Premier League? It would be unimaginable, and it would be that everyone would be comparing him to his brother. Everyone would be going, "Ah, he's not as good as his brother," and all that kind of stuff. So I think that him going to Germany and him going to Dortmund, where that they can kind of, I suppose, nurture him a bit and let him grow. But it does show the levels that where we've been and where we're at now that we can sell players on. I mean, what did we buy him for? Was it a couple of million?
Like 3 million or something like
There,
that.
yeah, well, there you go. We've got to look at that as a positive for our own development.
Even if we don't get any of the add-ons, and I've read that the add-ons are Sunderland believe they're achievable. I'm guessing it's stuff like getting in the England squad and stuff like that. Which look, I won't put my house on it because I need a roof over my head and I can't be that the risky with the house I've just bought. But I do think that I would put a lot of money on him playing for England at some point. So I think they are achievable. And if even if they don't, I think that's a £30 million profit. Look, Peter, I will say this. I said to you that off air. A lot of people are saying how great of a deal it is, and how good of a deal is it. But my biggest concern is I'm not seeing a penny of it. I just like the players on the pitch, and that's what makes me really sad. If it was 30 million euros in my bank balance, I might feel a little bit better about Joe Bellingham no longer wearing red and white and instead wearing yellow. But like, it's hard being a fan because you do have the love of the club and you want your club to grow and progress. And look, if you take it back to where it was a few years ago, and I've managed to do that quite a bit this week with the players that we've had on that were in League One. And no offense to them, great lads, both of them, but some of the stuff that was happening at the time that we discussed compared to what I'm now discussing about a player who's 19 going for the best part of like 38 million, potentially 38 million euros if he gets all these add-ons is just chalk and cheese from what the club was. And there is part of you that feels like, well, it's a big part of me that feels like, oh God, that's brilliant. Sunderland are kind of almost like where they should be. This is what should be happening. We've seen clubs from the outside of Sunderland. This has been happening a lot where just random 40 million transfers here and there for certain players. And you're kind of like, oh, okay, that's cool. But there is a part of me that's like just a fan and I just want to see good players. And like, I haven't connected to a player, and anyone who knows me personally will attest to this. Like Job for like a long time. I feel like I watched this Rolls Royce for ages and I just wanted like that couple of extra years. But like, and I mean, I know saying Dortmund might be a bigger club and a better thing, but there is no better place than Sunderland in my head. And I might try to convince myself that the Champions League's crap and that Sunderland are better. But there is part of me that actually believes it. But look, I think, Pete, if we come out of fantasy land that I'm living in, and let's pretend the 40 million's going in our bank balance and we're sharing it out, and the podcast definitely going to subscribe to Zoom for the next year. We'll even get the annual pass. It's a good deal, isn't it?
Wow, okay. Well, that was a yes, it's a good. I was wondering how much longer it could go for. I mean, put it this way, mate, you pissed all over my chips earlier on when you took the wind out of my sail and everything like that. When I was like, yeah, it's a good deal. And it's like, I like, but none of us are getting any of that money, are we? I was like, oh, no, we're not, are we? We
No.
are losing it, and we are losing a job. But you don't know who we're going to get. It is, look, who we don't know. We hope we know who we hope we're going to get. It's a very good deal financially. It's a deal that I wouldn't be surprised that there was some kind of agreement between the Bellinghams and Dortmund after how well things had gone there with Job. We've seen how shrewd and how clever the family have been in managing the careers of the boys, and I would don't blame them at all for trying to keep them away from the Premier League and trying to keep them away from the British media, because there is nothing that the some elements of the print media outside of the reputable establishments that you work for, Graham.
I was going to say, rein it in, rein it in.
There are some elements out there far away from those that you work, fine places, that will actively go after them, actively go after his personal life, and will make it as difficult as possible for him. And he won't get that in Germany because they don't have the resources to send somebody to hunt them over here. And it's actually a lot more. It's a lot more difficult to get access to players and everything in Germany. It's not really. I know it's a lot. Certainly a lot more different than it's a lot different now than whenever I had anything to do with it in the UK as a journalist, which was 20 years ago. But yeah, I know, but it's very difficult to get a hold of players here around the club. So I think the clubs might be a little bit better at managing that privacy side of it and just let them get on with the football. Yeah, look, I'll be honest with you. We all knew it was coming. If Jordan Henderson comes in, I'm not even going to bat an eyelid at this. And I'm always going to look out for Job. But I just think, yeah, that would work for me.
We were talking before because you've got this like benefit of we've both got friends who are football fans in Germany. I, as it is, have more Hertha Berlin fans than as connections, and I have Borussia Dortmund fans. But I've been to Dortmund for a game years ago when Lewandowski and that was there, and Klopp was the manager. But you're obviously in Germany, so you're seeing not Sky Sports, you're seeing Sky Germany, and you're seeing the reaction of Dortmund and the German media. What's the reaction to the move of Job over to Germany?
Overall, Dortmund have planned their whole summer around this happening. We've known that this was the move that they really, really wanted. It looks like you're going to get what's he called, Salah Ozcan and Marcel Sabitzer, two midfielders, going to be leaving at this window. Um, they've really kind of created a space to put Job in there, where he'll be fighting alongside Nementia, Emre Can, and Pascal Gross in that for two places in the midfield. The thing that's really caught the eye, though, apart from the fact that Dortmund they haven't signed him to just sit on the bench and bring him through. They've signed him to compete for one of the two spots that's there. They want him playing in as many games as possible. But the thing that's really caught the eye has been how they've talked about how the hard bargain that Sunderland's been driving. Like that's class to hear. I mean, look, I'm picking. Well, I'm trying to find the silver lining in like the darkest cloud. I didn't really want them to lose Job. There was a period, probably as late as like this morning, where I still thought, there's a chance, he might decide, but ultimately he was gone. So you got to look for the silver lining there, that it's good money. It also shows that Sunderland are that option for younger players still. Come through Sunderland, and where's your next move going to be? And of course, we don't just want to be like setting up the future Champions League players. We want to be, moving towards those levels where we're trying to win things ourselves. But yeah, I think it does set up. It does look really good if you're a young player looking for a pathway, and you want to aim for those Champions League places.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think that is a really good point, and that was what I was going to ask you, Sophie. Actually, is you're looking at what Job's done. He's come here in 2 years, and I think for the first year, there was maybe even Sunderland fans that weren't too sure if he was going to hit the heights that we wanted him to, mainly because of how the club was going and he was getting sort of tossed around in a million different positions, and there was conversations about where can he play, will he be able to play in this position, will he be able to do this, is he a deep line midfielder, is he an 8, is he a 10, is he a striker? He settled down under Regis and he was brilliant last season. I thought his performance in the playoff final was one of the best I've seen in. It was a white shirt, but a red and white shirt. You get my point. But it does give an example of, he's not the only example, but he's probably now the biggest one. Jack Clark maybe being the second one. of young players, be it players that are on the cusp of maybe being a very good player or a player that's had potential, like Jack Clark, that's maybe had a step back and needs to take two steps forward rather than two steps back, whatever the saying is. You get my point. Um, this will be good in a transfer window where it looks like we're under absolutely no pressure to sell anyone else at this point, which means we can keep the bulk of the squad together. And there's a lot of talent in there. And I think I don't know much about finances, right? But I've read a bits and pieces because I don't even know what PSR stands for. I just know what it is. And it looks like if we sell Jobe, it looks like it's going to happen by Tuesday at least, that we could potentially buy 6 to 7 sort of Enzo Lefebvre level fee of signings. And that's potentially, maybe say you bring in Jordan Henderson is obviously the big one you're looking at, and maybe someone else another experienced player that's 27, 30 on a cheaper deal. There's an argument to say you can bring in 5 players there that are good young players with resale value that could be the next Jobe, and they already have that evidence that it does happen at Sunderland because Jobe's not the only one. You've got Humes getting looked at, you've got Riggy getting looked at, and I know, touch wood, those two don't look like they're going to go anywhere this summer. But it's fantastic from a club perspective, especially. I know I said before, Sophie, that it's not my money, so therefore, I just want to see good players playing. But football is a business, and I suppose ultimately this summer, if there's a couple of players that we're in for that are good young players, they might go, actually, I might play there. I might play 40 games, and I might actually, if I continue to be good in a couple of years' time, they're not going to stand in my way. I'll be able to go to a Champions League club, and then we can just repeat and recycle. And when you talk about Brentford and Brighton, and I know, in my opinion, we're a much bigger club than Brentford and Brighton and Bournemouth, but you see what they do. They sell a good player, and you think how they're going to recover from that, and they just do and sign someone else because they've been shown to be that pathway. How important is that going to be from a perspective of losing Jobe? How big of a positive, should I say, is that going to be?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a massive positive. And you've just mentioned there Brighton and Brentford. And the thing is with Brighton is they sell at the right time.
Hmm.
They sell at the right time. They don't wait it out and then things become sour with players want to leave. You know what? We won't stand in the way. But like you said, we're a place where you do get time. I think before we've almost transformed. Look, we're fickle. We're fans. I want us to go and sign players worth 200, 100 million or plus or whatever. I want to see that. But also, it's not realistic. And I trust the hierarchy enough now to know that they'll protect us and they'll protect the club in terms of finances. And that's why we've adopted this strategy. I won't use model because I'm sick of saying model. This strategy of transfers. And it's a huge positive, when you think of how much, Pete said about how we've drove a bargain, we've drove a hard bargain, you know, how many times have we sold players and thought, is that all we've sold them for? Or that, I always think back to, this is such a random example, but do you remember Lamine Cornet when Everton were in for him and we didn't sell? Why didn't we sell? Oh, because we thought we were going to keep him, this, that, and the other when we should have took the initiative. But we can build something, and like Job said himself, said people had said about our team not having experience. Well, at Sunderland you get experience, you get time. We've almost morphed into, when players do come, that they will be given time and they might become brilliant players. They might not. We've had both flip sides of the coin. We've had maybe your Abdullah Bars and Dewey's who it hasn't really happened for. But then you've got your Jack Clarks, you've got your Humes, you've got your Sirkins, who've become important players for us. And like you say, we're in a very good position in terms of player sales. We don't have to sell anyone. And if people do want to buy our players, then best believe you're going to be getting a hard time off the people in charge.
That's what makes me feel confident about Hume. Like going back, for example, maybe 5 years ago or so when we were whenever it was that we were having a fire sale on the young boys that had any level of talent in the club, some that have gone out and do all right, some that haven't. Like I wouldn't have any faith on us holding on to players for like a decent value or even holding on them whatsoever. And I'm looking at the Hume thing and I'm going, nah, I don't think we'll sell him. This might be famous last words, but I'm going right. They've got his contract where he's got 2 years and he's got this year extension. And I'm thinking they're not going to sell unless they get 25, 30 million for him because that's what they believe his potential value would be. Is anyone going to pay that money at that point without him having any Premier League experience? Probably not. He's a right back. But in a year's time, we might not stand in his way. If he goes on to have a very good season, then we're going to get 30, 35 mil, whatever it may be. And ultimately, that's the wheels and that's the cogs of that turn. But Pete, you mentioned the guy's name before. um, I've still got my frustrations with him for what he did, 18 months ago, and I'm struggling to completely get rid of it. But look, I think on paper, bringing in Jordan Henderson into the squad with or without Job is an absolute no-brainer. But does this now accelerate the Hendo move, or is he too different in style? We're looking at different profiles? Is Hendo like a separate thing, and we can sort of sit back and just relax with that a bit?
I mean, I would hope it hastens the move and gets Hendo over the line sooner rather than later. I think it will calm nerves. Not that I think from what we know from Mr. Speakman, I don't think he gives a solitary shit what we think about anything.
No,
I don't think it matters how frustrated me dad gets on BBC phone in on that or anybody else's dad for that matter. Yeah, so I don't think he will do it quicker in order to placate the fans. But I think if it was done as quick as it seems like it could be, like after these internationals have been played, then yeah, ideally, I think that would massively placate a lot of people from going, well, when are we going to sign somebody? We haven't signed anybody. We're just selling people. That would like keep everybody calm. As I said, I'm sure it doesn't matter one little bit to Mr. Speakman or anybody else there about how they're going to do it, but. Uh, Where is he going to play is another question because I think he ends up dropping into the position that Dan Neil had played in, and Dan Neil comes forward into the position that Job was in. And if anybody has any other suggestions on that who actually knows anything about tactics, I'm more than happy to hear them. But that's the only way I see it working.
then the good thing is you're looking at the midfield itself, and I think Job's a massive loss because I think Job's our best player. And it's hard for me to disagree with that because for me, Job was that big physical presence in midfield that we'd wanted for years, going back like League One days when I've got no one big and physical in the middle. And as soon as we've seen anyone over the like 6'2", we were like, sign him. He plays for Morecambe, sign him, because we wanted physicality so badly in the middle, and Job just gives you so much. And I think I put a little jokey video up on Twitter about like with the Brian Adams and Mel C song over the top of it about Baby When You're Gone and all that kind of stuff. But I think you look at a lot of his moves within that kind of snippet of his talent basically and his highlight reel and like just such a strong imposing player that can shield a ball. That little move he does is really brilliant. But if we're looking at the team that we have in the middle, the midfielders on paper at the moment, if you're setting up the first game of the season and we sign no midfielders, you've got Daniel Holden, Enzo Lefay and Chris Reagan midfield. I'm not that upset about it. Do I think we need to replace Job with someone? Yeah, because it's a completely different division. But the beauty of it now is you play less games, so you're not playing Wednesday, Sunday, Wednesday, Saturday. It's not the championship, so you can maybe afford to spunk a decent bit of cash on a decent player that can add to that and add Hendo to it and be all right. But I tell you one thing that's going to really cheer me up here, and it's something Copley wrote on the old Twitter, which really cheered me
But
up, Pete.
isn't he? Do you know what? I didn't even say he chipped in. He has paid the money into the into me just fund
Yeah,
me.
he did. I shaved his hair as well, on like a number 8 or something like.
That shift, he said, that is a good. Yeah, he's a
Uh,
good thing to do for me.
but he wrote, "Imagine how horrible and how awful the summer would have felt if we hadn't got promoted." Mm.
Oh, oh,
But it's a really valid point, isn't it?
oh, crumbs. Yeah, no, it doesn't even bear thinking about, really, does it?
Because you look at the midfield now, and the question was going to be, what do we bring in to replace Job? But I think we're relatively healthy in midfield. I think you'd need to bring. I would look. I'd love Jordan Henderson to come back. Like I think it's just a total. I love the thing that I don't know whether people have seen it. Thomas Tuchel. I know he's not exactly the number one of everyone in the world at the moment, and everyone's loving him because of the England performances the other night. But Tuchel's that asked him about why he brought him back in his first camp, and he said because I can turn my back in training and leave Jordan with the group, and I know that the standards won't drop. And I thought, yeah, and I will repeat again. There's so much frustration with me from a personal perspective over what he did 18 months ago, and it will rankle with me for quite a while, to be completely honest. But if I'm taking all of that out of it, and I'm talking about Henderson as a football player and as an individual and professional, I think you'd actually struggle to find anyone better that could offer you Premier League experience, mentality, and quality. People say he's not good enough for England, but he's still in the England squad. So I think for me that one's a no-brainer. But I think we probably need another one on top of that as well. You don't forget Alan Brown, but you never know where he's gonna fit into the Premier League. But look, I'm not going to doubt any of these boys, apart from maybe Ian Poveda. I'm not going to doubt any of them because they've given me a very good season. But I think one thing to look at, Pete, is what type of player profile do we now need to cover the loss of Jobe? And is there any names that are off the top of your head that you can think of that you'd like to bring in?
Absolutely not when it comes to the names. I've got like it's one of these where I'm fully expecting it to just I'm going to sit back and let this transfer window just wash over me and know that the type of players that Sunderland are in for can range from the ones that I'm going to go, really, that one, to really that one, who's that? And there's going to be people I have never heard of who are going to be mentioned with Sunderland. So but in terms of what do I think we need, definitely a replacement for the physicality of Jobe in the middle. It's a massive loss there. Definitely somebody to give Patrick Roberts definite competition, wide outright. Um, Depends on what Niall Huggins is going to come back like, but really, do we need another right back? Um,
It depends on Huggins a lot because I would trust Huggins.
yeah, yeah,
I think
absolutely.
Huggins is brilliant,
And
but
obviously, yeah, Huggins is class. So is Elise. Elise is class as well, who
mm,
has a massive potential to step up. But it's what are they going to come back like? So potentially you're looking at fullbacks and wingers, really, and a striker. Well, we'd always love to see a striker. So realistically, I think it's going to be fullbacks and wingers.
what kind of profile would you want for a job replacement though? And do you feel if say we brought Hendo in, do you think we need one, or do you feel comfortable with the five options you've got, which would be Lafay, Rigg, Henderson, in like a say that one goes through, or we
We
bring them
talked
in?
about it. We talked about it just before I came on about Redoni from Coventry,
Mm.
who is realistically the profile of the type of player that we could attract, should be able to attract, who is looking to make that step up to the Premier League. Is he the answer to that Job-shaped hole? Perhaps.
I was impressed by him when I'd seen him, but I
Yeah.
don't think he's on the same level. But at the same time, and sometimes football's funny. Sophie, would it be the funniest thing to do just to sign Jack Rodoni anyway?
Oh,
I'm
it
not
would be
like
absolutely the funniest thing. Sorry, I have to get in on that. Oh, it would be. I was trying my best to be.
we have the opportunity to just be
I
funny,
forgot.
don't we?
I've done a lot of interviews in the last few days. I forgot which one I was on then. I was trying to be professional for a minute. I forgot what show I was on. No, it would be funny as fuck.
I'm with Pete on that one. Copy and paste that. It would actually be so funny. Can you imagine the meltdown?
It would be worth it, I think. That's why I'm kind of like, you know what? What would secure the signature? Because I read the other day that, like, I would actually have him. I was impressed by him. I think he would be in the Premier League a squad player, but there's a part of me that just would find it too funny not to do.
The temptation.
Yeah, there's part of me that's like, you know what? Yeah, we just should. But like, if we're looking at targets, right? I've actually thought about this a bit before I come, and I actually had a thing in my head. I used a bit of brain, which I don't have much of, but I borrowed the brain cell from the household today. Tommy Doyle's been linked, and I thought I'd look at his stats in comparison because I haven't watched enough of Tommy Doyle to make a real assumption on him and whether he'd be good enough to replace Jobe or as an addition. The young boy from Man City, I think, is really interesting. I forget his name now. but it was a Charlie Gray, the boy we
Charlie,
were linked to today.
isn't he only little? My dad was telling us he's only like 5'2" or something like that.
5'2". Oh,
No, he
blimey.
won't be he won't be 5'2". He'd be like 5'4", something like that.
I'll
There was
Google that while we're
Morphed
speaking.
into a Smurf.
Yeah.
You hear him coming before you see him. Oh.
There's a few people said like replacement for Job in like the links this morning. I think the word potential is maybe should be put before that, which it has been by some links. I think the kid's clearly a different player to Job and would maybe add something to it, whereas Tommy Doyle's a little bit more interesting. I was looking at just his stats to see how it kind of compared to Job. He's not quite as attacking as Job. He's not able to carry the ball as much based on his stats. Although he has played in a higher league, which is obviously you've got to take that in as well. But he makes more passes than Job. He makes 21.33 passes per 90. But from what I've seen before I came on, he looks less dynamic, but he has the trait of wanting to control the tempo of the game. So I think Tommy Doyle's potentially an option to add to it as well. But let me throw like a really random one in, right? Which is not that random. We have been linked to him ever so slightly. I think ourselves, Bournemouth, Wolves, them lot, Aston Villa, Brentford, and Leeds have all been linked to him throughout the summer. He's also been linked with Borussia Dortmund. But his agent has said there's nothing in the stories that he might be leaving this summer recently. But a lad that plays for Getafe called Chris Tantus Uche, Nigerian. He's 6'3". We've been tentatively linked with him. And when I say tentatively, I mean like our name's been chucked in with a load of others. So his agent is probably trying to actually drum up interest despite what he says, because we know how that kind of thing works. But he got 6 assists and 4 goals in 33 games from midfield last year for Getafe. He's 6'3". So look, it's a tentative name to check out there. But I think whether it's him or not, that's maybe the player profile we're sort of looking for, Sophie, isn't it? Someone that can match maybe Job's physicality and strength in the middle.
Absolutely. And I think that more so next season, because look, we're not going to play like a Southampton and have 60% of the ball. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. And we haven't played like that all season. We've actually played better when we've sat in a low block and we've defended for our lives. And you know what? That's not going to be pretty to watch. But I do think that the way that we're suited to play, someone like that in terms of the physicality for replacing Job is key. And, you know, like you say, 6'3", we're going to have to be dangerous on set pieces and corners. And, you know, we're going to have to do that scrappy fighting thing of, or if we get a chance, and if it is just a corner, that we make it count. So, and that's a good thing with Job is that in terms of set pieces and, you know, just that physical presence, it's a presence. It's as simple as that. And if you've got someone who's 6'3" in the middle, you know, against a little tiny midfielder, you know, then I would fancy our chances personally.
I just think we definitely need to replace it. But I've also just seen the funniest tweet I've maybe ever seen. I don't think the guy's meant to be funny, but it has made me laugh quite a lot. So the deal isn't good. It's downright insane we'd let him go for under 40, no matter what the gentleman's agreement was, because it's not like the Bellinghams are going to have another child and we get first pick.
Oh dear God.
You just imagine Speakman sitting there in the waiting room. Is it out yet? Mrs. Bellingham? Mrs. Bellingham, have you put a football on its foot yet? Yeah, its control's not right. It just came out. Oh, well, apparently it's twins. Oh, right, okay, right. Do we get first pick on both? What's the selling fee? Mr. Speakman. Look, 2 more before we go, because ultimately
That's like a Black Mirror episode, man.
easy question for you, Pete, and then same to you, Sophie, afterwards. But how will you look back on Job's time at Sunderland?
Fondly, really, really fondly.
Is that it?
No, I'm just having a big drink of water, so I didn't choke all over the question. But since you've gone through the fourth wall there, I'll just cough and get it out the way. There we go. Yeah, really fondly. The thing I'm going to look back on it is that the ability to keep a hold of the football, that is really smart and physical ability to just be able to hold on to the ball seemingly in any situation, twist and turn and find a way out. The likes of which I've never seen for a player for Sunderland to be able to do. And that way that he would glide with the ball when he was moving. You
yeah.
really, you're watching, you knew you were watching something that wasn't going to belong to us for a long time, and you just kind of had to appreciate it there and then. And yeah, there's been times he hasn't been at his best, but we've got to see the best of him sometimes. And for that, I'll absolutely always think very, very highly of him and what he brought to the club. I mean, like, people will tell that Jude Bellingham, his brother, as well, is going to go on to have one of the great careers in football, and people will always be able to remember going, "Hey, well, like, I remember when he was down Seaburn Beach, like, on Boxing Day, buying scratch cards, like, because you had that weird crossover that just as Jude Bellingham was hitting this like superstar stellar thing, he was brought into Sunderland's orbit at the same time. It's brilliant, man. I love it the bit. So yeah, always going to think very fondly of Jobe, but also of Jude and the rest of the Bellingham as a family. I think they're clearly very smart people, what they do with football.
We'll always have Jude Bellingham singing Shearer as a wanker at Blackburn.
Yes, well, I love it, man. Absolutely.
Oh, I got that at half time because I was at the game. I got at half time to me. Yeah, now we're getting beat 1-0. But Jude Bellingham's been caught on camera singing Shearer as a wanker. It's a class mirror. It was just like really funny. But I agree. Look, I think for me with Jobe, I've loved him since the day he first came in. I think the first game being Ipswich at home when we got beat 2-1 and he got his first goals against Rotherham. He got those 2 goals. And I think what I love most about this squad as a whole, if you ask me to pick like my favourite Sunderland team of all time, I'd probably be like Megan, Summerby, Quinn, Phillips. Very rarely do players of the modern era get in. I mean, I think the most modern one that would have got in would probably be either Pickford or Johnny Evans, if I'm going to pick my ultimate 11. There's players that are in the squad. Maybe, I mean, okay, I'll include Ahmad in it. He would probably get my best Sunderland 11 of all time. But it's been very rare that over the past decade and a bit that I would put any of our players in the best 11 I've ever seen. And whilst Jobe wouldn't get in there because we've had some absolutely superb midfielders in my 35 years of supporting, or 38 years, I don't know, whenever I first went, I think it was when I was 3 or 4. He's definitely up there with one I'll remember really fondly because I think he wore the shirt with a lot of pride. I think he genuinely could care. I think you've seen his reaction to like the tackle on Haji Wright. You've seen his reaction at the end of the game when we won the playoffs. He was a kid that really cared, that just so happened to be majorly talented to the point where like his footballing career naturally was always going to be above the level that we can reach, and that's unfortunate for us. But it's I think as someone said before, without being too cheesy, it's better to have loved than have never loved at all. But I've loved having him at Sunderland, and I've loved everything that comes with him, and I'm delighted that I think I can trust myself when I say I think Joe will always hate the Mags. And that's enough for me.
Graham, man, I was kind of happy to let him go before all this had made me bored. But now I'm going to be jumping in the car and driving to Dortmund and standing outside of whatever hotel he's in with a boombox above me head in the.
I've got plans. Me and Ashley said like at one point we've got a free weekend if Sunderland are not playing, and then we can get tickets to Dortmund. I've been to Dortmund and stayed in Dusseldorf, go over. I'm more than happy to don me Jobe 7 shirt and get myself over to Dortmund. But Sophie, favourite memory of Jobe's time here, which I think is the best thing, is the best question I could ask, because look, if we'd done a podcast on Joe Lynch's departure, which would have been the case a couple of years ago, would have been like, what's your best memory of Joe Lynch at Sunderland? When he left. Now we have players where you can actively discuss your favourite memories of him. Like what's been your favourite memory of him and his time here?
Oh, there's loads because he's just been an absolute joy to watch. Not just technically, but like what you said, like he wore the badge with pride. And, Sunderland's a club that someone can fall in love with quite easily if you buy into us and you buy into the area. I think he did that. But it has to be Wembley. It has to be the moment where you can see him like hit the floor and it's just pure joy and was walking around and blowing kisses and that moment of connection. It's easy to pick goals or it's easy to pick, stuff he said in interviews where he says, if I'm playing in red and white, I'm not asked where I play as long as it's in red and white. It's stuff like that, but that moment of connection, and he was a part of the squad that got us back to the big time and part of that team that will go down in history.
Yeah.
And you know what? You've always got to be thankful for that. And I hope he reaches the very, very top. I really do.
Yeah, me too. I hope he goes on to get as far on as he possibly can. And if he doesn't, you're welcome back. But it's funny you mentioned about like goals and stuff like that. The thing for me would be Swansea, not because it was a great game. It was one of my favourite games we had last season, the way we turned it back and got the 3-2. And it was like one of those times when I went, oh God, Sunderland don't really do that. And there's all the stats coming up in how many years it had been since we come back from 2-0 down. But it was his reaction and the way the players around him responded to him scoring the goal. I love watching it back because you see Riggy like jump in the air like an excitable child because he is, and you see Jobe like I think he punches the badge and he says best fucking club in the world, man, all that kind of stuff. And you see the way Ballard celebrates, you see the way Hume celebrates. Hume never smiles, by the way, but I quite like that. I quite like this aggressive kind of happy passion that he has. But you saw all the players come together and bond in that moment, and it kind of was replicated and numerous times throughout the season. And I always felt like Joe was a big centerpiece of that. Like I felt like even his goal he scored at Southampton, I think was our sixth or seventh defeat in a row at that time. It was the best goal he scored for us, to be honest. It was outstanding. And he runs over to the fans and he's shouting, he's swearing, and he's getting bleeped out on the Sunderland highlights. And that was at a really low point. It was just after the Beale situation. We'd lost, I think, 6-7 in a row. We kind of knew that the playoffs and promotion were a complete pipe dream, and you're kind of wondering if things have gone completely south and sour. And he tried to keep us together as best he could, even though at that point his form wasn't doing that well. And at that point he's 18. So for me, just little memories of his celebrations and stuff like that will live long with me. But I'm now Chris Riggs' biggest fan, so sorry, Joe. Enjoyed Dortmund, mate. But Pete, ultimately, I think on a serious note, lots of good memories to remember, and it's a testament to how far Sunderland have come that we're talking about a player leaving a club and we're having a podcast about it and talk about the good stuff.
I don't know why, and I'm not wanting to dig him out specifically, but Josh Scowen signing for
I
Sunderland.
hate Josh Scowen. I'm sorry. He's
Right,
like,
I don't know
no,
anything about. I don't know the lad, and I've got nothing.
I don't care. He's the worst player I've ever had in my life.
Right. Well, anyway, I remember being on.
Shite.
I remember being on the metro in Berlin on the U-Bahn and being stood at the station in Mitte and being on the phone with my dad, and my dad going, "Well, look, it seems like he might be a good from what I'm reading. They call him the Rat, and like he gets the rat." And I'm just thinking, like, it's all these it's like something out of the film, like all the metros coming by and the newspapers are blowing, and I'm listening to this nonsense about this footballer who I've never heard of, who we should be really happy that he signed because he's the Rat, and that's what we need in midfield. And now we're doing a podcast because Jobe Bellingham is signing for Borussia Dortmund. And we're getting a hell of a lot of money out of it. And it really shows how far we've come as a club. And I have noticed that there's already been the comments from them who shall not be named and all of that, from from the mags up the road, like saying, "Oh well, it's just a selling club now, just get selling them all off." Well, we always knew that Bellingham was going to go. It was more of a matter of time, and I don't think we can argue with the deal we've getting. I wish there wasn't a deal, but there was always going to have to be one, and I'm happy with that one. Really, it's
Ultimately, Pete, we're either selling Joe Bellingham for a lot of money or we're selling our arse for Saudi Arabia, and I know which I prefer.
oh yeah, absolutely. Uh, it, it's funny. I do keep being asked by people who owns Sunderland, and I think people are quite surprised when I don't say it's not a Gulf state.
France.
Yeah, yeah. Basically, yeah. A lot of French speaking Switzerland. But yeah.
But onwards and upwards. Next podcast will hopefully
Oh,
be.
absolutely. It's I think I do think the momentum that the club's progressed at has been very, very quick when you think about it. That it was really not that long ago we were in a very dire situation and trying to spin it to ourselves that things were okay But when you look back at it now, going, "Oh my God, I was eating out the bins. What was I doing?"
Next to the rat.
What did I use? They just any little morsel, any little scrap of anything that was worthwhile digging into, and to genuinely have really interesting all right, it can't all be wonderful news, and Bellingham leaving isn't wonderful, but it is. It's the best news of a player leaving. I think we can hope to be getting. Um, it shows they've come along a massive way, and I'm all about that. It's great, and I love seeing the reaction that it has on the whole city. And like my interaction with Sunderland is limited to basically mostly family. But even that, when I see them and I see who they've been speaking to, how much it lifts just everybody around. Like, I love that. I think it's absolutely brilliant.
Well, that's us all off to the waiting room to await our next Bellingham that we have our
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
we
Keep
have rights
churning them
on.
out. I mean, I do hope there's yeah. I mean, no, I probably need to cut that before I say something that will.
Godspeed, Mark. Well done, son. Keep going. Thanks very much, guys
Do
and
worries.
girls.
Thank you.